always package ourselves as a full band duo. The band's me and my wife, and we both consistently are playing multiple instruments, and we're both singers. So I play guitar and sing, but I also play a full drum kit with my feet, and it's that's its own thing. And then my wife Louise, who's from Dublin, she is an absolutely incredible singer and performer. On top of that, she plays ukulele, but she has a percussion set up like congas, bongos, that kind of percussion. But she also plays mallet percussion. And what we do is we kind of put a lot of what would normally be left to a fiddle player. Louise will play it on with the mallet instruments, and we kind of, instead of like rocking out like a lot of bands will just rock out Irish classics, we do a bit of that, and but we Irish up rock classics, and because we're both rock singers as well as Irish singers, we feel we delivered with that, and we kind of we're like the circus band.
That was Dave Barckow of the self-proclaimed full band duo, the Diddley Idols. Hello and welcome to episode 126 of the Irish Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Becker. Dave Barckow will be my guest on the show today, and we're going to cover a bunch of different topics. We'll talk about the Diddley Idols, Dave's previous work in heavy metal and hard rock bands, and his love of the New York Mets. If you're listening to this interview in the first week of November when it's airing for the first time, you can see the Diddley Idols this Friday at the Maryland Irish Festival in Timonium, Maryland. This was also another conversation that you could have caught in video form earlier if you were active on the Irish American Baseball Society's Community Network website. To get early access to these interviews and to be a part of our discussions about Irish history, Irish culture, baseball, and more, make sure that you are a member of the Irish American Baseball Society. Let's get started. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thanks, Rick, for having me.
So we're going to talk about a lot of different things over the course of this interview because my focus was going to be just on the music, but Dave is a huge baseball fan, so we're going to get into that a little later in the interview as well. But first of all, I wanted to start off talking about your band, Diddley Idols. I've seen you a few times. I know, for example, in early November, you're going to be at the Maryland Irish Festival. And if somebody is going to go see the Diddley Idols, you're not just going to get your regular, normal, everyday Irish band. You are getting a really different experience.
Thank you. I hope that's a good kind of different.
So why don't you describe that for everybody? Why don't you describe what you do as a band?
Well, okay. Well, we always package ourselves as a full band duo. The band's me and my wife, and we both consistently are playing multiple instruments, and we're both singers. So I play guitar and sing, but I also play a full drum kit with my feet, and it's that's its own thing. And then my wife Louise, who's from Dublin, she is an absolutely incredible singer and performer. On top of that, she plays ukulele, but she has a percussion set up like congas, bongos, that kind of percussion. But she also plays mallet percussion. And what we do is we kind of put a lot of what would normally be left to a fiddle player. Louise will play it on with the mallet instruments, and we kind of, instead of like rocking out like a lot of bands will just rock out Irish classics, we do a bit of that, and but we Irish up rock classics, and because we're both rock singers as well as Irish singers, we feel we delivered with that, and we kind of we're like the circus band. You know, when you go to the circus, there's the elephants come out, the acrobats, but the music never stops. We're like that. So if we have a 90-minute set at a festival, it is 90 minutes, song to song, blah, 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 blah. And that's kind of what we do. We want to just, we have a lot of energy. We're both city kids, and we move. We always think of it, we're like the musical equivalent of ADHD. We're easily distracted. So you might get a verse and a chorus of something, and then a verse and a chorus of something, and then then we'll go back to that other thing back there. And that's pretty much it. It's people seem to have a good time. We're always happy. We love performing, and we hope it shows, and people seem to have a good time with us. And it is the something different that I think that gets people to really enjoy. They can be themselves a little bit. they can latch on to familiar bits that they know in little quotes here and there, and it seems to work. So we're very happy that people enjoy this.
It's almost like going to see Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins if there were two of him. Like, it is really an amazing experience because you are just getting energy is the only real way to describe it. It is just a constant go. And one of the things I like about that is obviously I love traditional Irish music. I love the bands that play the music, the way that it has sounded for generations. But one of the things that I like so much about you is in a festival setting, you're seeing a lot of bands who are performing some of the same songs and they're doing it in some of the same ways that you've seen in the past. And then you come along and it's definitely something different. So, especially in that festival setting, I think you are a really great band to have on the bill because it's something different, but it's same enough that it really works.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Rick. Thank you.
So you are from Woodside, Queens,
Yes.
and I'm assuming that that has a big influence in your music because we didn't get into this yet, but you come from a very varied background where you used to do some heavy metal, you used to do a lot of hard rock and some other different types of music. So, how did growing up in Queens influence you musically?
Well, Woodside is the biggest Irish community. Maybe not now, but when I was a kid, I mean, I can't think of any place that would have by far, and not necessarily Irish American, like people from Ireland, like the influx of immigrants. And it kind of always been that way. And my mom's family is from Galway. And I grew up, Queens is a crazy place. There's 200 languages spoken here. And everybody is, now it's a giant melting pot. But when I grew up, I know I look very young, but in the late 70s and early 80s, there were these pockets. Woodside was the Irish pocket, and then Astoria, there was, which is a mile away. There's signs in Greek. If you go a mile the other way to Maspeth, a part of Maspeth, the signs are in Polish. It's still kind of like that now. So it's kind of cool because everybody's exposed to everybody else's culture. But in terms of music, growing up, my parents loved Irish music. I grew up seeing all the great show bands. For people that don't know New York City, Woodside is geographically, we're kind of about a mile and a half from the East River and what's called, I guess, Western Queens. So it's a fairly urban area, and like growing up, you can walk into Manhattan. You know what I mean? Like it's a thing, and because there's live entertainment, there's millions of people just in Queens, and it's a big place. So growing up, I would go see all these old classic show bands. Very like the way we deliver our music. They don't stop. If they might do a waltz set and couples are dancing to waltz. My parents love to dance, so they'll be dancing, and they might do 10 waltzes in a row until the last person dancing, and then they'll change to a jive, and they'll do jives until people start jiving, and that's how it affects my music. The metal thing is just my generation. That's just what was happening. When I was a kid, it was blowing up. So after the metal, I was in a band called White Trash. We were signed to Elektra Records, and we toured all over, got to be on MTV, all those things. And when I was in my early 20s, and it was great, and I loved that band. It was, like a funky hard rock band, and great to tour and do all those things. But when that kind of ended, there was another influx in 1996 of Irish immigrants to New York City, particularly to Woodside, Queens, and Woodlawn, which is in the North Bronx. It's sort of the last part of the Bronx. Senator Chuck Schumer lobbied to get 100,000 visas for Irish immigrants. He had done this in 86. And at the time in 86, it was a huge influx. And so all of a sudden the bars are packed, and I got to really know the Irish culture not the Irish American culture I grew up with, which is great in its own way, but to understand there was a bunch of Irish people in their 20s, like I was, moving to New York City, and it was amazing. I discovered the music in a different way, delivered straight from the source. Not only traditional music, their take on rock. I got to know what country hits they like, what classic rock hits were bigger over there, and it was great. Aside from all that music stuff, socially, it was amazing to have this whole bunch of people my age. I mean, thousands upon thousands. And every night of the week, 7 nights a week, the bars are packed. I had a Monday gig for 13 years that if you showed up at 4 a.m, there might be 300 people crammed into a bar at 4 a.m. on a Monday night. It was just a great time to be in New York, and particularly in Irish New York. Short story long. I know I talk a lot, so.
When you host an Irish podcast for 4.5 years, it is definitely something you get used to long answers to your questions.
Yeah.
So when you decided to focus on Irish music and, you enjoyed your time in a metal band and in hard rock bands, but when you decided to sort of make that focus, why was that?
Work. I went from, so I was in a band. I got to join my favorite band that had $1 million record deal. You make more money playing bars in the Irish neighborhoods than you do when you have $1 million record deal and you're on MTV. I don't understand the math equation of that, but it's a big machine. And this is the 90s, so making records wasn't a bunch of people on their computer. It was going to big studios. So that had a lot to do with the price of things. But there was work every day. I still do. I do 300 gigs a year if I can, when I can, in and around that. Since then, because I love it. We tour with the Diddley Idols. I'm the drummer and singer, one of the singers in Eileen Ivory's band as well. So we do plenty of touring with both the bands. But if I'm in New York, I'm out there 6 nights a week playing. And that was the focus. All of a sudden, it went from this like starving artist to just work every night and fun work, and the loving the music was secondary for about 2 seconds at first. And then it was this thing, just loving the lifestyle. Like, I love it. I like the idea that I go into a room full of strangers, and especially as time has gone on, people want to hate the guy singing. They have a negative view of musicians in general. What's this guy going? And trying to win them over. And I dig that kind of energy. I see why it's not for everybody, but that was the switch. And it was the socializing thing that, people I grew up with in their mid-20s were starting to have families and do grown-up bits. But now all these other people were coming and they just wanted to go out and have a good time. And it was just perfect timing in every way. And it was this music that I had always heard my whole life, that I was exposed to, that I loved, that I sort of forgot about, but it was in there. It was like stuck in there. And the way the songs are delivered, you know what I mean? That was the thing that really, there's an honesty to them,
So as somebody who was a disc jockey on rock radio for almost 20 years, before we move on completely to the Irish music and those topics, what are some of your favorite hard rock and metal bands, some of the bands that influenced that part of your career?
I'm a huge Kiss fan. Queens is a different, we love our Mets, we like Kiss. It's a thing. You know what I mean? And that was the first, the Beatles are always first and foremost for me, but Kiss, the Who, that stuff. But then when I heard one kid moved to our block and we were playing wiffle ball. I've been gigging since I'm 12, so I'm pretty young when all this is happening to me. We're playing wiffle ball and in the backyard, and I heard Metal Health by Quiet Riot, and it wasn't that. It was just that it was a new sound, and I was into Black Sabbath and the hard rock stuff, but this was this new 80s sound. And this kid, Ronnie's his name, Ron Pena, he's a still person in my life. He was a little bit older. And he was into the new metal, and that was it. And I'm not a huge Quiet Riot fan. I love that record, but Queensryche, the first 2 Dio records, by a country mile, the first 2 Ozzy solo records, Then that led to Iron Maiden. For me, like the metal got more aggressive. Like when I heard Ride the Lightning when it came out, Metallica Ride the Lightning, 1985. I'm 13. That was another new sound. That was only 2 years later, but in kid world, it seemed like a whole other lifetime. That was when I heard that. I was like, oh my God. And then, waiting for those first few Metallica albums after that to come out. But metal got more aggressive. Anthrax, Overkill, King Diamond. I love those bands. And then Appetite for Destruction came out, and I was like, yeah, I kind of think I like the rock stuff a little bit better because the metal was getting silly. And then I was gigging by the middle of high school. I was gigging all the time. So, I love the metal stuff. But when I heard Appetite for Destruction, I kind of realized it's the hard rock that I love, and then Skid Row. And I didn't want to like Bon Jovi. I thought it was, like a whole bunch of words you're not supposed to say. But then someone played me the Bon Jovi Springsteen connection. I was like, oh yeah, and that's it. But around 1990, when I finished high school and gigging became my full-time job, it was only about the music I was doing and the classic rock that I grew up loving. So again, short story long, I'm a yapper. Just keeps going.
So who are some of the Irish artists that got you interested in that type of music, or was that just sort of being around the scene, being around so many Irish people that maybe you weren't even thinking a particular artist, but you were just, engulfed in this culture, so it just came out that way?
It was, so I got a gig in 1997. I got a call from a guy named Dominic Cromie. He's from County Armagh. And he said, I have this band, this Celtic rock band. And I hadn't heard that. I grew up listening to all the ballads, all the waltzes, all the old classics. I know those Irish songs. And it's not about bands. It's about, there's an Irish radio state program on WFUV. It's still going. It was on in our house every Sunday. It's still going on Sundays, but there was another, I don't know if it was the same program, but it was another Irish program on Saturdays, but my parents always had on. So that was always, and there's a place called East Durham, New York in the Catskills where we went every summer. So I was always exposed to that part of Irish music. But when Dominic called me about this Celtic rock band, I was playing drums, primarily playing drums at the time. And I set my kit up, and there was a kid there. I mean, I'm 25 at the time. This kid was 20. Matt Mancuso is his name. He played with the Mickey Finns, and he was in Eileen Ivory's band. He played with a million other bands. He was in Lord of the Dance, but we became friends that night because it was just me and him, two New Yorkers. He's from Brooklyn, I'm from Queens. We think we're very different. We realize we sound the same to everybody else, but our cultures, we feel are very different, even though they are not. And we think our pizza is very different, and they absolutely, that's an absolute fact. But we were just the only two New Yorkers, the only two Americans in this crazy world of these 20-something Irish people going nuts. So he started playing the fiddle, and I didn't know what traditional music was. And they're like, just play whatever you feel. Because it was only guitar, fiddle, and drums. And honest to God, for about a week or two, and it was like, okay, do this gig. Oh, you want to be in the band? And we're playing every night. I thought he was just soloing. And I remember telling people, this kid's amazing. He just solos, and he yells to the guitar player to change the key. He yells to me to change the beat. So I thought we were making shit up. I didn't realize that these were traditional little pieces of music, little 16 bar, 32 bar pieces of music that we were repeating. And once I knew that, that's what I fell in love with, that there's no rules. I mean, there's kind of rules, but there's really no rules. And particularly from drumming, there was nobody, there was literally no, I could do whatever I want. I happened to be at that time really into Latin rhythms. So I was able to apply all those Latin rhythms. I had been playing at that time with a band that played heavy metal in Spanish, and we had a lot of Latin rhythms in our music. And yeah, it was just, I loved it. That's what I fell in love with. That's what I'm still in love with. And then I started playing guitar. I'm not going to call anybody out. One of the guys in the band wasn't great at sticking through being able to perform late in the night. And I had started playing guitar. So I learned a few songs on guitar. So the night would invariably end with me playing guitar and singing a few songs. And then that led to me and Matt having a few gigs that way. And then before you knew it, the drums were kind of like my second instrument, and the guitar became my thing. So that's what it was. It's the when I learned to back Irish tunes, and I'm not very good at it, although I love it. I love that you just I don't know. I can't even I wish there were surprisingly, I don't think I'm running out of words. It's just that thing that nothing. It's always the moving target, the no rules thing, and I'm a big believer that with any band, any kind of music, yeah, there's kind of rules and there's certainly a science to music. But like, I hate when I go see a copy band, a band in a bar, and they're trying to duplicate the record, and the guitar player has all the patches with the sound. Like, I hate that shit. I appreciate the time it takes to do it, but to me, that's like looking at a painting and putting tracing paper over it. I want to hear someone interpret the song, and that's just me. I see why people do it the other way, but
No, that's incredible. So one of the big things that we focus on both with baseball and with Irish culture is that we want to pass these things on to the next generation. You know, we want the next generation to pick up a glove, pick up a bat, but we also want the next generation to listen to Irish music if they can learn at least some of the Irish language. Like, those things are really important to us. And I think sometimes when there are bands who are playing the traditional Irish songs and they're playing them the way that you think of them traditionally being played, that can feel kind of stale to a younger audience. Do you think that the way that you perform Irish music in this more upbeat, energetic way might help bring in a younger audience and bring in different people so that we can preserve this? Because maybe if they're introduced to it in a way, I mean, I think a great example when you talk about Celtic rock bands is they bring people into a very specific part of Irish music, and then they maybe get into the more traditional things after that as well. Like, do you think you're helping to preserve this music by doing it differently?
I hope so. I wish I could claim that that's the objective, but it's not. But I hope so. And I yeah, I think the other, but like the quote unquote Celtic rock bands, um, like I shouldn't say that. Everybody's great in there. Everybody does their own thing. Back to the painting thing. You never look at a painting and say, you know what, that guy needed to use more purple. Like, art is just art. The way people want to present their music, that's all good with me. I think a lot of the Celtic rock bands we see, like the top bill ones. If you're on the top bill of anything, you're great. You're doing a great job. And a lot of the sort of not newer, because some of them are old guys like me too. Sometimes the rock isn't very good. like it seems like forced. And I couldn't think of one person in particular, one band in particular by any stretch, or the person playing the fiddle or the trad instrument. Maybe they just learned the part to fit that song, and maybe a traditional instrumentalist would be like, "Oh, well, that's not right," blah blah blah, and that to them that's not good. To me, it doesn't matter. People listen to that band, and if people feel good when they're looking at something, it's good. You know what I mean? Like, and so I guess whatever brings people to feel good and to learn about music, sure, they're going to learn about it, because they might not learn about it from that band that they saw that got them in, but there's a merchandise tent down a few feet away, and maybe they'll find a CD they like, or they hear something playing in another thing, or they hear someone in one of the smaller tents singing an old traditional song, and they could hear something in it that catches their yeah, it's all good. Whatever brings people to it. I think our thing is maybe brings people just a little bit of lightness, because sometimes some stuff could be a bit heavy. I don't like life when it's serious. I don't like serious. Like, real life, that's serious enough. I don't think entertainment should be serious, but I'll watch a sad movie every now and again, and so whatever. What do I know?
All right. So Speaking of sadness, you are a Mets fan, I gather.
Yes, correct. It is a sad existence.
So I want to go back because I can do the math, and even though a lot of Mets fans have had a pretty sad existence, you were probably right at the right age for that 1986 team.
I was so my first I didn't really think about not that I didn't think about baseball. New York is a baseball town. I don't know how much time you spent here. Like Chicago's a baseball town. St. Louis, that's a whole other love for their team that I wish we had. But New York is a baseball town. That's probably why our football teams continue to be crappy because who wants to come when you're second sport in town and or football maybe even less. But for me, I went to my first game in 1979 and I was hooked. You know, the next day I got baseball cards. I was hooked on the numbers, like that. I love the numbers thing. I love the nerd aspect of baseball. You know, I particularly love my entire adult life of explaining baseball to Irish people who think it's just a bunch of fat guys swinging a bat at a ball. I don't know that that's exclusively the Irish mentality, but people that aren't baseball fans, it looks like something. It looks like something that baseball fans we know it is, but it just does kind of look like a bunch of like bigger dudes swinging the bat at a ball. But I loved it the second, and so by '86 I was already in, and I had already seen some terrible Met teams. 79, 80, 81, 82, and 83 are my two favorite Met seasons because it was kind of when I was 10 and 11 at the time. They were the worst. I think they lost 103 games in 1983 for the George Bamberger years for any Met fans. They were terrible. Like George Foster was this big signing, and they were terrible. But I love those 2 years in particular because that's when the math part of it, the numbers part of it made sense to me in a different way. And yeah, so but 86 was pretty special. And from 84 when they were winning through 1990, it was a special time to be a Met fan. It was a lot of like our guys were, you know, there were Doc Gooden's painted on the side of buildings. There's billboards everywhere. You know, when I first went in 1979, I am aware that there is a team in the Bronx that won a world championship in 77 and 78. You know, I'm aware of that. I hadn't heard about it because I live in Queens, and back then in Queens, and probably still, it's Met World. As bad as we are, it's what we have here. Now, you know, there's been a lot of people that move from other parts of America and whatever. People in the suburbs seem to like the Yankees, but it is Met Town. So
I have a little theory. I mean, I didn't come up with this theory, but when I was talking about why baseball is so much bigger in New York than football, I had a friend who was a New Yorker, and he had this theory, and I want to run it past you. A lot of places, for example, I live pretty close to Philadelphia. So Philadelphia's a big city. They have a lot of sports media, and they have, you know, all of that apparatus, but it doesn't move as fast in Philadelphia as media moves in New York. So you can still be talking about Sunday's Eagles game on Tuesday, and people still want to be talking about it. And you can start talking about the upcoming Sunday's Eagles game on Thursday, and people are interested in talking about it. But in a city like New York with so much sports media and that moves so quickly, and you have to gather that attention span, it's almost like New York needs a sport that plays every night or plays six nights a week, because you have to talk about that night's game and then move on to the next thing, because it has that, you know, city that never sleeps atmosphere.
I hadn't thought about that, but that definitely makes sense. You know what I mean? I think baseball speaks to the New Yorker kind of vibe of like when people say, hey, what's it like to grow up in New York? I always say, well, and I know this, I meet tourists every night. So my resident gig is in Times Square. So every night that I'm not on tour, I'm playing a gig in Times Square to people from all over the world. And nobody is ever like, what do you think of New York? No one's ever like, it's all right. You either love it or you hate it. Like there's no middle ground. But people ask me what it's like to grow up there. I say, well, if there's like 20 million people in the area and there's only 19 million pieces of bread. If you dig that kind of energy, this is the town for you. And I think like the nature of playing every day with baseball and the grittiness of our favorite players, whether you're a Met or Yankee fan, lends itself to that kind of mentality of all right, no matter what's going on, no matter how crappy the weather is, no matter what tragedy is happening, we got to go to work today. And I think that's the appeal of baseball to the New Yorker. I hadn't thought about the media thing in terms of football. I always put it to, why would you want to come to a city where, like, I'm not a hockey fan at all. Like, I'm not from a hockey neighborhood, if that makes sense. It just wasn't my thing, But it'll be August, and I'll hear an argument about hockey. You know what I mean? Someone in the stands, like, long before it starts, And people are still going to talk about the Knicks this year, but no one's talking about the Jets and Giants. We don't. In Queens, we talk about the Jets. It's a whole other heartbreak. But yeah, it's just football. It's the fourth sport in New York. But that's interesting. The media thing, that must be it. The other sports play a lot more, and it just doesn't look. People go to the games. I'm over being sad when the Jets aren't winning, but I still watch, that kind of thing, But yeah, that's good. That's a good way to look at it.
And another thing is a city like New York that has, I would even think, and I'll get that next boo, a city like Boston that is so old, like New York and Boston, they're going to gravitate towards baseball because to them, the NFL is kind of like the new kid on the block. That started in the 50s or 60s, depending on when you got a team. Like that's new.
I only boo Boston in the wintertime, but in the summertime, it's okay. You know what I mean? I got no beef with them, But that totally makes sense, In terms of both cities, this is one thing I love. Look, I'm a 53-year-old man. I hear the name of a city and I boo. That's what I love about all sports. I go to stadium. I've been to 27 of the 30 stadiums. This is not patting myself on the back. I don't do anything but play music. I got tons of time on my hands. So, but I like that. I went to Atlanta once. It's hard to explain. Maybe a Yankee Red Sox thing they understand, but the Mets Atlanta thing is a whole other or same level of just disgust for each other. But I was in Atlanta. I was in my hotel miles from the game I was going to the next day. And I just happened to be wearing a Mets shirt. And the door opened and there was a family, a very nice looking family. And the kids, the dad and the mom all booed me as soon as the door opened. That's what I love about baseball and sports in general. I love that we get to boo cities and strangers, and then and then we laughed and joked about it, and we talked a little bit about it. Like, I like that. Literally that was authentic. You said Philadelphia. I felt I had to boo. I had to make a statement for my people, and that's so childish and beautiful all at the same time, and completely ridiculous. But I absolutely love that about sports. I hope everybody gets to, as we call, like affectionately, bust balls to everybody else. It's great.
All right, Dave. So if somebody is looking to check out the Diddley Idols live in concert, where are they going to go to find your tour dates? Where are some places that you play quite frequently?
Well, you can go to diddleyidols.com, diddleyidolS.com, and that has all our dates. Regularly, if you are in New York City, my wife tours. We tour separately, but we're together. One of us, often both of us, will be at O'Donoghue's Pub. We are there 3 nights a week. It's on West 44th Street, just off Broadway. On Wednesday nights, I'm at Garvey's, which is on 41st and Broadway. All our gigs are in Times Square. We play a place downtown called Ulysses once a month, if you're in the financial district. But if you're in New York City, come see us, and we will boo your city for you.
Dave from the Diddley Idols, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a great conversation. I had so much fun.
Well, thank you very much, Rick, for having me. I'm sorry I talk so much. Anyway, thank you very much. And I will talk about music and baseball anytime you'd like. And I hope to run into you. Maybe we'll see you in Baltimore, in Maryland, rather.
In 2 weeks, on November 17th, I will be back with another brand new episode of the Irish Baseball Podcast. My guest will be former music executive and current SABR member and author Bill Nallon. I'm your host, Rick Becker, and this has been episode 126 of the Irish Baseball Podcast.